Hello, and welcome to Making Sense of It. I'm Mona Duncan, and we are looking at the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory and the genius of Dr. William Glasser. And prior to, for years, he would go up and down I-35 to different cities, and he was asked to speak. And as often as I could go, I would go and listen in the audience and take copious notes. And so, today I have 10 different quotes, just a little small portion of them, and others can make their comments also. But I specifically asked Sharon and Linda if they would be, what is your input as to what the quotes mean and so forth. So number one is the fact Dr. Glasser said, fun is the genetic reward for learning. Can someone explain that?
I was teaching a closed circuit for science in fifth grade. So my kids were divided up in teams of three, and each were given a wire, a light, and two batteries, and said, make it light. And so the first little boy, it took a while because we had just begun the circuit information, and all at once he had it. You have never seen a bigger smile, a happier little group of boys in your life when that little bitty light bulb lit. So learning is fun. That's the purest definition I could give of it.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I know a number of times when I've been by myself, maybe I'm not trying to tie my shoe, but some routine like that you've done before or what have you, see. And then, but whatever it was I was doing wasn't quite working. And then all of a sudden something would click in, and I do it a slightly different way. And I know if the camera had been on me, I would have been smiling.
Right.
And I could kind of feel the curves of the end of my mouth going up like that, and just the joy, the satisfaction, the good feeling, and the fun.
Okay, so here's another quote from Dr. Glasser, and he said, I put people in there because I think he was talking about most people. He said, most are not aware of how they feel until they don't feel well.
Could I just go back? I was muted.
Sure.
Number one, I think fun implies needs some kind of action or doing. So I think learning is part of having fun.
And so as you begin to learn something in the action of doing, it becomes fun. That maybe would.
No, I actually think to have fun, you can't just sit and wait for fun to happen. You have to do something. And one of the things you can do is learn. Learn new things.
Yeah. And it may not be a ha-ha fun, but it's still pleasant.
Little gradations of minor approval or creativity to at the other end, belly laughs.
Okay, another thing that he said, and this was in Quality World, is made up of people, places, beliefs, things that we have enjoyed. Pleasure is what locks something into your quality world. I see some thoughts going on, but what about?
Well, way before Glasser got exposed to William Powers and control theory, and then wrote about it, his own part of it, and then the Stations of the Mind, and then control theory in the black paperback book, and then changing it to choice theory. Way before that, all of us in day-to-day conversations 50 years ago, 60 years ago said, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you picture you're going to do after you get your degree? What are you going to this and that? So we always, that concept of people having a picture in the direction and the picture guiding them, has always been there. And I love it that choice theory explains all these everyday kind of interactions and functioning of people, why and how we behave.
It says pleasure is what locks something into the quality world. Any thoughts on that?
Say that again, please.
Pleasure is what locks something into your quality world.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been, I've always tried to keep in mind that the pleasure comes from the fact that whatever this thing is, or person or event, is somehow matched to my needs. And so when it's need satisfying, that's pleasurable. But I also like to keep in mind that Glasser says, that knowing our need profile is not as important as knowing what our quality world pictures are, because those are what really drive our behavior. So I think sometimes people, including me, get kind of sidetracked thinking about my needs, and that can be helpful, but a lot of times it is a distraction from just, no, look at what I want. What is that I want?
Yes, Alice?
I'm new to Glasser, and I did a 1-day intensive with Mona a while ago, and I've been attending these meetings as often as I can. And, my cousin Sue is an expert, Sue Tomaszewski, and I find the needs very helpful to me. Oh, yes, she has a high power need, and I have a high love and belonging need, and a low power need. I maybe I'm not as familiar with the quality world picture ideas as I should be, but I mean, a lot of things that I'm troubled by, when I go to the needs idea, it resolves for me. So pick your pleasure. But anyway, just thought I'd mention that. And maybe I should look up what quality word picture is, and maybe that would even help me focus further. But anyway,
well,
thanks.
Sometimes we don't even know what our quality world picture is. It's just something that we are drawn to that brings satisfaction and pleasure. I know I think of a friend that gave me a shirt, and I thanked her very much, and I said, do you not want this? She says, well, I have 3.
Aw.
And the thing of it is she would shop, and she saw, she bought it the first time and wore it and liked it. And then she saw it again. Oh, I like that. And so she bought it. And it's that thing that we don't even realize that we have adapted it. And so here's another quote from Dr. Glasser. He said, there are 3 behaviors that will short circuit our quality world. And that is the past, feelings, and symptoms.
Yeah.
Anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know how to explain it more than what he's saying, but I do know that, if I get a headache and I'm headaching, to put it in choice theory terms, I'm choosing that. Okay, that will tell me, hey, something's not right in your life today. And I need to go back and look at my needs or the quality world picture I'm working with that day. Maybe it's not an attainable one, and my headache is telling me you need to do something differently, or you need to look at a different way to get that quality world picture. So yeah, I think, and a lot of that will come from past pictures, is what I'm trying to say. Right. And the feelings are most likely current, because it's something that's happening today. So I get the physiology that goes with the feelings. And then the symptoms would be the same. The symptoms would be going on. That would be the headache is a symptom of something that's not right in my life today. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's very good. Thanks.
Yeah,
I have
right.
Mona, this happens regularly in our meetings here. You know, we're talking about something and even a seemingly kind of casual statement somebody makes. I've never heard something said that way before. And it's like this. Wow, I could use that myself. Sometimes I'm struggling to make an example with somebody, and then I've added that into my organized behavior. So a while ago, we're talking about quality world pictures, you know, and I'm saying the intensity of them and the strong feeling of them. A lot of you have told you I'm math oriented. Well, my perceived world is a subset of the real world.
Mhm.
Sure.
You wouldn't, it wouldn't be accurate to draw the real world with a closed circle. It's infinite, you know, universe, 200 countries, whatever, 6,000 languages, whatever. Okay. So it wouldn't be accurate to do that, but to try to grasp it, it's helpful to have this gigantic circle like this. And then you can't even see this little dot. That's what I know about the real world, which is nothing. Okay. Within that dot, my quality world is another subset of my perceived world, even smaller. There's lots and lots of stuff I know, but very little of it is called our quality world pictures. Well, the aha moment that I had a while ago is we bring those here and hopefully focus on those. But there are comparably strong pictures, perceptions in my perceived world that are not need satisfying. They're colored dark red as opposed to bright gold. Okay, so what? And I know about them. Yeah, I want to avoid that person. I want to avoid that situation. I don't want to eat this because I may get upset stomach. Things that we know about, and they're there forever, but they're just not. So I'll go away from them. We don't have a separate kind of a comparable to the quality world picture, but they're in there and they're intensely red. And so it just hit me while ago. I haven't focused on that before. So these we go toward, and the others we're going to avoid.
Okay, so here is another quote that may go hand in hand with what you were just saying,
All
or
right.
trying to say, trying to verbalize.
Yeah.
Dr. got you kind of changing venues. The behavior car's steering wheel is voluntary. You have choices over thoughts and actions. The behavior car's steering wheel is voluntary. You have choices over thoughts and actions.
It kind of reminds me of, takes me back to what Sharon was saying. And I know that one of the things that I encounter working with younger people, especially, but some people older too, is they feel like it's their feelings, their emotions that drive their behavior because our emotions are so strong. And so trying to help myself and other people understand that, no, actually you have a choice here, but you can't just automatically change. I can't just, say, okay, I'm not going to be unhappy right now. I have to think something different, or I have to do something different if those back wheels are going to follow. But it's really hard to, I find it really hard to convince people that that's the case, that it's not really their emotions that are driving their behavior. It's whatever they're thinking or doing that's driving their behavior and the choices that they're making.
Yeah. And once we see that, it's so profound that it really is voluntary, that we have control over the thoughts and the actions.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How would you help someone with PTSD? A military person that's come back from Afghanistan with PTSD. how would we help that person in Dr. Glasser's world picture?
There is an article, if you'd like, I'd be glad to send it to you. That was in the Glasser. I don't remember who wrote it, but it's wonderful. And I've shared it with several people that, suffered from PTSD. And in this one particular person that they were working with, he would become very anxious and he would start cursing. And whenever he began to curse, he had a muse with him at all times. And whenever he would start to curse, he would see that muse go away. And he realized, I want this presence around me. There was something there that was comforting to him. And that helped him, and the counselors that worked with him helped him to begin to realize, to make that muse, that angel, that whatever it was that he was seeing that was helping to calm him down or to, keep him excited about something, that he could begin to see that. And he began to see how he could control that steering wheel is voluntary, that we have the choice over the thoughts and the feelings, the thoughts and the actions, but not the feelings. And it was just life-saving for him.
I have
I'd like to see that.
I have a personal experience of this. So my son was in Afghanistan for 3 tours.
Oh my.
And when he came back from the 3rd one, he was not in a good place. He would never, ever let anybody diagnose him as PTSD because he saw that as weak. And he's, he just said, I have control over my thoughts and my actions. I can handle this. But clearly he wasn't handling things very well. He was drinking a lot.
Oh boy.
So I had a little conversation with him. Make a long story short, I had a convo with him and said, thing about drinking is it works for a while and then it stops working. But when it stops working, it's sometimes harder to stop drinking because you've been drinking for so long. And I just kind of left it at that. I didn't nag him. I didn't, and about 6 months later, he stopped drinking entirely and he hasn't had a drop since. And that was about 10 years ago. And I asked him one time, I said, why'd you stop drinking? And he said, it wasn't working for me anymore. And I thought, there were some other factors that happened too. He clearly saw that it wasn't working for him anymore. It was actually leading him into some really bad places. And, but it takes me back to the total behavior car, but also just the idea that until somebody evaluates that what they're doing is not getting them what they want, they're not going to change. Doesn't matter what I say or how often I say it.
Mm-hmm. And whether it's casual, whether the real counseling takes place after the meeting, where those thoughts begin to linger with you and you kind of have to prove to yourself if it's not working before you can completely give it up.
Yes, but you're saying something to your son. I don't know, this sounds old fashioned, planted a seed, and maybe he reflected back on what you had said to him and that helped him.
Oh, I think he did. I didn't say that to him. I didn't want to say, oh, that's what I told you. but I do think it was there. I do think that seed was there.
Yeah.
Alice, once again, whether it's PTSD or alcoholism or drug use or neglect or abuse or what have you, especially with the help of another responsible adult, okay, there may be tiny little movements of the person. So here they're 100% whatever this is. Next week they're only 99%. They've moved 1%. And you all have heard this story. Glasser working at the hospital in West Los Angeles with locked up psychiatric patients, veterans, and they were tightly contained. And his job was to try to get them more freedom. And he said, we didn't make it. We only got 60% of them out, something like that. And one of his stories was the guy came in for one-on-one and he said, before we get started, will you help me with something? Help me carry these boxes. I got to take these down to Dr. CJ's office, So the person helped him. They went down there and they came back, and then they closed the door. And this is kind of it's a wobbly, what do you call it? I'll think of the word in a minute. You will. Before we get started, I want to ask you something. Or twice now he said before we get started, but they're started as soon as they see each other. So he says, the guy, when you were helping me, this is the guy with crazy cognitive functions. When you were helping me there, were you having crazy thoughts? No, I don't think so. What's your point? My point is, I think if we can find more things for you to engage in, where you're helping someone else, doing something worthwhile, something important, something fun, something for yourself, I think the crazy thoughts will get less. Now, we don't know if they'll go away forever or totally, but moving in that direction. And so that's the way it works. And of course, underneath all of that is the relationship between the helping person. So the helping person may just at the beginning just be there and do non-criticizing, blaming, what have you, developing the relationship so that this other person chooses to maybe put this person in their quality world and be somewhat influenced by it. But it starts with that relationship and just tiny little steps.
And Alice, I suggest that planting a seed is very apropos. It's a truth that has been in existence forever, to plant the seed and let it take root in a way that we don't even know it's doing that. Dr. Glasser was always very frank. I mean, he didn't beat around the bush. And so here's one of the things he said. The world believes in mental illness. Brain tumors and Alzheimer's are mental illnesses, but not irrational behavior. Mental illness is not treatable by psychology. Now, that takes a lot of integrity to be able to speak that out to a big arena of people. Mental illness is not treatable by psychology.
Can't you imagine the tilts in those people's scales as they heard this for possibly the first time?
Yeah, but it was a seed planted.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do think that the more people are exposed to this understanding, the better people are in handling their daily needs, meeting their needs and choices.
Every time.
Yeah.
And even if you think you are blatantly against it, I know I would talk with the prisoners and so forth. I'd say, prove me wrong. Prove Dr. Glasser wrong. Prove it wrong.
Well, we've heard before, after his phenomenal work at the Veterans Hospital in West Los Angeles during that time where he's looking to get board certified. Okay, when he left there, he never got a single referral from that whole group of people because he was the antithesis of the psychiatric community with his book, Mental Health and Mental Illness. Never got a referral. Fortunately, he got the job at the Ventura School for Girls and then developed his reputation for that. But not a referral. He was a heretic. I say to people, I think this is fairly accurate, with a medical degree and a board psychiatry licensure, he functioned as a counseling psychologist, or you could say a counseling psychiatrist. But I mean, we hear regularly that he never once prescribed psychiatric medication in 30 years. Mona, do you have a follow-up? I'd not heard this thing, this phrase about mental illness is not treatable by psychology. Do you have any more to say about that, or thoughts? I'm trying to work that around.
Well, right after that, he said, no one in their right mind would choose to depress, which kind of goes hand in hand with the not being treatable by psychology, that it really is an internal thing, that we have more we are, we're we have been created, we are created through the genetics of parenting and being born and all that kind of stuff, but we are free agents. We are free agents. And it depends on what we listen to, what we hear, what we eat into, what we digest. And as we can be aware, going back to greet the week, that's to be aware, because right now, this second is the only thing we have at our disposal. And so we can hear those other comments and we may disagree with them. That's a bunch of bunk. But what if it's not? And so at least give it enough of a tryout to see if there may be just a smidgen of truth in it, a smidgen of reality.
Right. And, I'll say all of this, and I think I'm on good grounds, that when we choose a behavior such as depressing, that is our best effort at that moment. And it is meeting our needs. Now, how effectively it's meeting our needs is the question. But at that moment, that's where we're at. But until we, I'm doggone, I lost my thought. But by giving medication to counteract that normal behavior for what we are thinking and doing, we are not really treating mental illness, as Dr. Glasser said. We're creating a symptom of a chosen behavior and chosen thoughts. And that's a lot of what people have so much difficulty grasping.
Yeah.
Alice?
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, my divorce came through, finally, I owned my home, didn't have to look at this person anymore. And I went into depression. And so my friends were like, oh, you have to go to, let me give you a referral to a psychiatrist. So I went to the psychiatrist, Dr. Bear, and I was always against medication, but he said, let's try a low dose of an antidepressant. I said, okay. I really wasn't working. He said, well, we have a couple of choices. We can put you on a second medication. I'm like, oh God, no. Or you can exercise. And it just so happened that my sons were going to a private trainer in their town, this guy, Chris. And I said, okay, I'm going to make an appointment with Chris. And I went, once or twice a week. And, by the end of the third week, I was feeling back to myself again. And, I was giving my dog longer walks. I was, participating in my life again. And
Wow.
and what also helped was selling my house and, getting rid of the bad memories there and moving to another place. So, but yeah, I think it was really like you said, doing something that benefits your body.
Yeah.
And in turn will benefit your mind. And it was a credible changeover.
So here's another quote from Dr. Glasser that applies to every one of us as a helper. All you can do is your best when you counsel a client or when you help someone. It is always a present relationship problem. Don't spend your time finding the past problem, because it is the present that is causing the problem. And that kind of goes back up to what interferes with our quality world is the past, feelings, and symptoms, which brings it into today, that we're staying stuck and, getting depressed and doing all that kind of stuff because we're not doing any activities to ward it off. Another quote. Go ahead.
I was going to add to that a little bit. Another statement that came out at the conference in St. Louis is there is no present in the past. Do we live in the past or do we live in the present time? You know, so just that sentence just sums up everything, you know, no
I-
present in the past.
I really
Whatever-
like that because, you know, people talk about you forgiving your, you know, your ex and forgive or forget whatever, live in the present. You're right. Live in the present.
Mhm.
And that's helped me so much.
Good.
Yeah.
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 And again, it's right hand in hand with this, what we've been talking about. Quote number 9 from Dr. Glasser was, unhappiness is caused by an unsatisfying relationship. Seek happiness by doing something. Get busy. Don't sit there and just
Mhm.
do something, do something, do something.
Mhm.
And here's point number 10 that is something I have used again and again in teaching the pleasure pain syndrome. He says you cannot give up on happiness, but you can give up on, you can, okay, let me rephrase it. You can give up on happiness, but you cannot give up on pleasure.
Right. And that's your drug addict, your alcoholic, all of those behaviors, because they do bring us pleasure, and we translate them when we're in those situations as bringing us happiness.
Yeah. And it can be much more simple than that. It can be the lazy person. It can be the overeater. It can be that is bringing
Of course.
pleasure because you've given up on happiness, but I have to have some kind of pleasure. And it's going to those things that cause more harm than good.
Mhm.
Yes, Wendell.
I wanted to I gotta go in a minute here. I wanted to circle back to the depressing thing. In the book, the black glossy covered paperback book Control Theory, when it came out in paperback, chapter 7 was is choosing misery. Is that a choice? You know, misery. Okay. And then I heard Glasser talk a lot of times, and then I experimented with different ways of introducing that, because as soon as you introduce it, there's a lot of like this. And so I have to be really careful about, I choose to be really careful about introducing that. Sometimes I would say, Glasser would say blah, blah, blah. In other words, my job here today is to tell you as accurately as I can Glasser's 10 blah, 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 his actions or whatever, and some of the things he believes. You don't have to believe them. My job is to present them accurately and then try to make some sort of a case. So on the depressing, let's say if I were seeing a client for the first time and they said they're depressed, I wouldn't say, I don't think I would say, well, you know, Bobby Joe or Raymond or Suzanne, how long have you been choosing to depress? First of all, they may say, excuse me, yeah, I'm going to go get another counselor. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, you know. But I can say, how long have you been feeling depressed? Oh, about 4 months. Well, if somebody says that, you say, what happened 4 months ago? I mean, that's a segue to the you know, but then you start saying, well, so what have you been doing with yourself all this time? Did you go out with friends? Oh, they call me for lunch. Do you go out with them? No. Okay. So you sit at home. Okay. And you start getting an accurate picture of the choices that they're making, isolating, not answering the phone, not returning calls, not going to work, stuff like that. And so then those are all choices that people are making. So when you were doing this and this and this, you were feeling happy. Now you're doing this, this, and this, and you're telling me that you're depressed. And I'm slowly trying to circle around and introduce that notion that the choices that this person's making and these other behavioral or cognitive things has with it the physiological, the feeling component of this, what we call
Rob?
depression. Now,
I gotta go. Something's
all
going
right,
on.
Bye.
all right, ooh. So
Okay.
it's a challenge, but it's very accurate. And well, you know, well, they call me for lunch, but I don't feel like it, you know. But anyway, you find a way to introduce that, and then eventually the person says, "Are you saying that I'm choosing like this?" And I say, "Well, I don't know, you know." I really want to say, "Yep."
Okay.
There was a cartoon. This is 40, 50 years ago. I've got it somewhere. Two guys on the street. "Hey, Herbie, how you doing?" "Hey, Alfie, I'm pretty good. What's up with you?" "Well, I changed psychiatrists recently, and my new psychiatrist is immersed in reality therapy, and now he's blaming me for all of my problems."
Yeah.
Whereas the psychiatrist before had been entertaining the complaints and the blaming of others. You know, now this new one who's reality therapy is
But
blaming.
Wendell, you just gave a good example of how you the counselor builds a relationship. That is, until that counselor has the right relationship, will the client trust you to introduce new ideas?
Yeah.
And that can take a long time.
Mhm.
You gather
Right,
information.
Mary Lou?
Yeah, you're right. That's
But
yeah,
what an
exactly.
awakening it can be whenever we realize, ooh, you know, yes, that hurt, but oh, there was a point to it.
Mhm.
And once I recognized that that hurt, realized, you know, well, okay, maybe I really am hurting myself. Okay, well, thank y'all very much for being here. We're going to stop the recording and then we'll have more chat if you would like.
Oh, I think you did that already. Or maybe you didn't.